Hi, this is Josh Person, and I wanted to follow up on the conversation we had about the big reset several weeks ago about the coronavirus crisis. And after 6 or 7 weeks of perspective and dozens of conversations with senior HR leaders and many vendors and business people, I think we're going through three stages of transformation as an economy, as a society, and as individual companies. The first is what I call react. And what we've learned very quickly is that this virus is everywhere and nowhere. It's sneaky, it's unpredictable. It may take some time to recover, and people are quite frightened by it. And so organizations have quickly responded by sending people home, laying people off that are in close proximity positions, and starting to create what I call low-touch business models where we can do some of the same things and fulfill the same consumer demand in more of a low-touch manner, getting a little bit further away from people, but solving their problems over the phone, face-to-face, through transportation and other things. And one of the biggest themes in the initial phase of React was working at home and preparing people to work at home. The interesting finding about working at home or remote work is that a very high percentage of HR people think it's gone well, but 2/3 of employees are not so sure. They're tired, they're exhausted, they're overwhelmed, they're distracted. They don't feel their productivity is what they would like it to be because they're also dealing with family issues and many other distractions at home. So that's sort of the react phase. The other thing that we've learned in that phase is that companies brought together their teams of IT, HR, facilities, finance very quickly and responded very quickly. And we created much more of a sense of cohesion and agility and resilience than we thought that we had. The second stage of the big reset is the response. Okay, we've got everybody at home. We've laid people off or given people furloughs. We're dealing with the fact that our airplanes are empty, our stores may be empty. What are we going to do now? We need well-being programs. We need mental health programs. We need to pay people for things that we didn't realize we needed to pay them for. We need to give them stipends for technology at home. We need to put in place listening tools so they can feed back to us more quickly. We need to come up with a new form of performance management because the performance and management goals are just out the window. We need to teach managers how to manage people on remote teams. Managers and young people are among the most stressed by the agile work environment. We need to make sure that everybody is in a crisis response and that a lot of us are still going on into operational roles. And we also have to come to grips with the fact that this isn't going to be a temporary crisis. This is probably a long-term transformation of the economy that we're going to have to adjust to. And the example I've been giving is the TSA. When we had 9/11, before 9/11, we used to walk into an airport and just go right up to a plane. Obviously, we don't do that anymore. We have all sorts of checks and databases and x-ray scanners and things in between that. We're now coming to grips with the fact that that is the same thing that's going to happen here with this pandemic. And just last weekend, Bill Gates gave an interesting discussion about not only do we need to calm this pandemic down and get past it, but there could be more pandemics after this because of the changes in the local global climate and how the entire world has changed, and there could be whole families of coronavirus viruses coming later. And so there's this big response of activities and programs and learning and support and coaching that most companies are well into now. I think, and that involves rethinking how HR operates, empowering local facility managers to be much more active in making decisions at a local level, because this is an asymmetric war we're fighting, where what's going on in China is not the same as what's going on in Nebraska, and Nebraska is not the same as New York City, and New York City is not the same as San Francisco. So we need to create highly empowered teams that are connected to each other through a sense of common awareness and data. And I talked a lot about that in the resilience video I did. But the third stage, which is perhaps the most interesting and maybe the most important of all, is what we might call the return stage, where we come back to some form of work or business that probably doesn't look like it did before. And I think companies are now realizing that that is going to be different. And let me give you some examples. One of the largest healthcare providers in the Northwest told us that because people don't want to come to their hospitals because they're afraid of getting infected, a huge number of very important medical procedures are not showing up. They're home. So they're actually underutilized. In fact, the Stanford Health Network just reduced wages because they're underutilized. So they've turned on telemedicine. And these guys told me that the telemedicine demand is 100 times greater than it was before the crisis. And they've made a decision now that their entire clinical population and their care population is going to get focused on telemedicine, and this is going to be a permanent change. This is not a temporary change. Let me give you another example. Large bank in Canada that shut down 80% of their branches in small towns found that the demand for their banking services was skyrocketing. So the first stage, of course, was to empower and train all these people to be remote call centers at home, call center agents. And then they realized that the types of transactions and requests they were getting were not typical banking transactions. They were actually financial advisory transactions. What do I do if I get laid off? How do I apply for unemployment? What kind of insurance should I get? How do I create a budget? Can I get a loan? And so they're going through a very quick transformation of these roles to be more advisory roles that are actually higher value to the bank than they were when they were in the branch. And the CHRO told me that we're now convinced that this is a permanent change also. We're not going to go back to putting these people back in the branches and just collecting checks and giving people cash back. And this kind of transformation is going on in industry after industry after industry, where we may come back to work in some fashion with all sorts of new safety protocols and distancing techniques and tools to prevent people from getting too close together. And we're going to have to change the cafeteria, and we're going to have to decide how many people come into the building at once, and what do we do about the desks, and what do we do about the work facilities, and all of that, which is really hygiene changes. But ultimately, we're also going to have to figure out how to serve customers in a way that they feel safe. I think the greatest example of this is the millions of people that applied for unemployment in the last 60 days. We now have roughly 1 out of 6 people in the United States, I believe, that are unemployed. While that's happened, there are now almost 8 million new jobs open. Jobs in transportation, jobs in healthcare. Sales is exploding with growth because people are still buying things, and now we need better conversations on how to buy them. One of the companies I talked to went through an entire training process of teaching their salespeople how to conduct meetings and have conversations and sell online through video. And it took a few weeks, but now they're in a whole new growth cycle of understanding how they can deploy their sales organization virtually. So in this new phase that we're just beginning, and it will go on for probably many months and perhaps many quarters, we are actually in a business transformation. And so at the end of sort of the first 60 days of this, the conclusion I'm coming to is that a lot of things are going to change. Our culture is going to change. We're going to be more focused on individual human capabilities and potential and well-being and alignment. Managers are going to have to become much more empathetic and much more sensitive to these new styles of work and the sense of safety people have at work. We're going to get really serious about health and safety protocols and how we can extend them through our supply chain to our customers. And we're going to be reinventing our businesses and what we sell and how we sell it. And we're going to be reinventing HR too. And so let me just end with HR, since that's really where I spend my time. The HR profession now is the heroic part of this recovery. We're working with IT, we're working with finance, we're working in facilities, we're working with operations. But in most companies, the HR department is the pinpoint, because all of these topics of pay, work styles, work location, safety really come back to things that we used to consider part of HR. And I think what I'm finding is that perhaps at the greatest point in my career as an analyst, the HR community is coming together and acting as the heroes that they know they need to be. An immense amount of connectivity and sharing and talking with each other. Our academy has exploded with growth. We're getting more than 1,000 members a month now. And in fact, we're really reframing our academy as really the world's home for HR, because we really think what HR people are trying to do is not just iterate and improve and align their organizations faster, but transform their companies, transform their HR departments, and connect with each other to learn as fast as they can. The final thing I'd like to say is something that came up on a long call this morning. I think there is a certain, as I mentioned earlier, cosmic karma to the crisis. There are studies now that seem to show that employee engagement has gone up. Trust in employers has gone up, despite the fact that people are quite concerned about their earnings and their careers. The air pollution has gotten better. Traffic has definitely gotten better. And the environment is actually starting to look like it's on a positive trend. So to some degree, we can take a step back a little bit into where we are and say, even though this virus is a sneaky little thing, it was really in some ways nature's message to us that it was time to take the society and the human relationships and the planet a little more seriously. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we were in a hype cycle of economic growth and stock markets and earnings and prices and stock prices and house prices. We're kind of beyond that now, and we're moving into a new future, which I think will be much more meaningful and hopefully transformational for all of us. I want to say one more thing, and that is that I'm very aware that there's an enormous amount of stress in everybody's lives. A study that just came out from MetLife yesterday shows that the number one thing people say about their work and home life right now is, I'm tired. I'm tired of working hard. I'm tired of being online. I'm tired of not knowing what to do, of not being able to find the right groceries I want, not knowing where to shop, not being able to see my kids or my family when I want. And we've been through Passover, we've been through Easter, we've been through some very significant events. And I just want to tell you that it's all going to be okay. I'm not, the king of the world, but I do believe that I see all sorts of positive trends coming out of this. Our hearts are all in the right place. And at this third stage of returning to the world as it will be in the future, and it will be different, I think we're going to find that we have an opportunity to make life better for all of us and our companies as well. I'll be continuing to do these videos as often as I can and give you my perspectives. And I'm writing lots and lots of articles about what's really going on in companies, including the return to work playbook and the remote work playbook that we've just published. And as always, I welcome your feedback and conversations on any of these topics. Thank you so much.